Hello, my bookish friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Megan. Today we are going to be doing a little bit of spring cleaning with my books and my shelves. So I already went through and took every single book off of my shelves and I cleaned them all and wiped off the dust off of some of the books. It's been a while since I've cleaned my shelves, so I figured with spring around the corner, it is the last day of March today. Today would be a good day to do a little bit of cleaning of my shelves. And then while I went through and I did that, I pulled off a bunch of books that I no longer need to have on my shelves. So we're going to do a little bit of an unhaul today. It's been a while since I've went through my shelves and cleaned out what I do not want to have on my shelves anymore. So today was a great day to do that. I went through and I pulled off a bunch of books that I no longer have the desire to read, or I just don't want the copy that I have anymore. There are a few books on this pile that are mass market paperbacks, or the copy is just really worn and I would like to replace it with another one. But then there's also some on here that I have no desire to read anymore, so I would like to give them to a better home. Hopefully, they will get a little bit more love somewhere else because they are not getting any here on my shelves. They've been sitting for a really long time. So, today we're going to go through all of the books that I decided to get rid of in this unhaul. I have a pretty big pile here. So we'll go through every book that I decided to pull off of my shelves, tell you a little bit about the book, why I decided to unhaul it, and then hopefully these books will get a little more love somewhere else. Normally, with the books that I get rid of, I either take them to my local bookstore and get a little bit of money back that I can spend at that bookstore if they're in good condition. But then some books that I either got from thrifting, or I found at a library sale, or I found at a little free library, those ones I will usually just put back into little free libraries so other people have the chance to read them as well. But either way, they are going to a good home and we will be able to make some room for new books on my shelves. So let's get into what I decided to unhaul. All right, the first book that I decided to pull off my shelves today is a book that I would actually like to repurchase, just a different copy of the one that I have. So this is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I've heard phenomenal things about this book and I really do want to read it. However, I have the mass market paperback version. I found this thrifting and I knew it was a really popular book and I knew I wanted to read it and I've heard really great things. So I snatched it up because I thought that I had to because it was there and I wanted to read it. I'm not very interested in reading the mass market paperback version of this. It is massive. This is a really big book in general. And then when you shrink it down to a mass market paperback size, it gets even bigger. So this is a thick copy of a book. So it's just not something that I would physically want to read, but I do really want to read this book. So this is about a man who goes back in time to stop the assassination of JFK. And like I said, I've heard really great things about it. So I do definitely want to read this, just not this copy. So I am going to be passing this copy along. My next book is actually the exact same reason as 11/22/63. This is another book that I really do want to read. I've had it on my want to read shelf forever, I feel like, but I do not want to read this copy. Again, this is a mass market paperback. So this is Karen Slaughter, Pretty Girls. I've heard really great reviews of this book and I definitely do want to read it. I've heard that this one is very dark and a little bit graphic and gruesome. So I'm kind of just waiting until I'm in the right headspace to read something like this. I'm undecided if I want to get a new copy of this one to read physically or if I just want to borrow it from my library first and see if I like it. Either way, I'm going to be donating my mass market paperback copy of it because it's in pretty rough condition, as you can tell by the spine, and it is really big. I'm just not really a fan of reading mass market paperbacks. So I will be adding this one to the unhaul pile as well. The next book that I have, I'm in a little bit of a dilemma about. So this is another copy issue that I have. The book I read and I loved. This is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I read this book earlier this year and I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It is still a book that I think about all the time. I loved it. It made me cry. It made me feel all of the emotions and just a really great story. So I would definitely recommend The Great Alone if you're looking for a good historical fiction to read, or just Kristen Hanna in general. I love her as an author. But either way, this copy that I actually have two copies of this book. The other one that I read is up on my shelf up there that I bought new from Barnes and Noble. But this one I found at a Goodwill. So I thought it was a score. I was really happy to find it because I had been looking for it everywhere. And then I went to read it and I found out that the first 50 pages of this book are actually ripped out, which is unfortunate. So I'm at a little bit of a dilemma on what to do with this copy. I don't want to take it back to a little free library or back to Goodwill because I don't want someone else to run into the same situation that I did if they're really excited to read it and then they can't read the first 50 pages of it. I also don't want to throw it away. I feel like that feels so wrong to throw a book away. I don't think I could ever do it. So I don't want to throw it away. I feel like my only other option is to like repurpose the pages as crafts or something along the lines of that. So if you have any ideas on what I should do with this book, let me know because it's been sitting on my shelf and I have no idea what to do with it. So let me know down in the comments if you have any ideas for what I should do with this. But for now, I'm just going to put it off to the side and wait to see what another opinion thinks. The next book that I have for my unhaul pile is a Frida McFadden book. So I'm a big Frida McFadden fan. I think that she writes great popcorn thrillers. They're really easy to get through and they all have short chapters and interesting premises, and her plot twists usually get me. But this one I was not a huge fan of. So this is The Coworker by Frida McFadden. I actually read this one earlier this year. This is a story about two women who work together in an office, and one day one of the ladies who works in the office mysteriously does not show up to work and nobody can get in contact with her. So the other woman is trying to figure out what happened to her coworker, and it kind of just spirals from there. I was not a huge fan of the plot twist on this one, and the writing to me just felt very cringy. I was cringing for a lot of this book. This one just wasn't for me, unfortunately, and I have no desire to read it again or really recommend it to anybody. So I am going to be unhauling this one. The next book in my stack I've actually had since the very beginning of my reading journey. It was one of the first books I remember purchasing at a thrift store because I had heard people talking about it and I knew there was a movie of this book, so I was interested to read it at the time. This is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. This is a YA novel about Finch and Violet, and they meet on the ledge of a bell tower at school 6 stories above the ground, and it says it's unclear who saves whom. So it's kind of the story between the two of them and how they save each other through meeting each other up on this ledge. I've heard that it's very sad and it's a very heart-wrenching story and you really feel for these characters. I just have not felt the need to pick this one up. I never really gravitate towards it. So it has been sitting on my shelf for way too long. I think that somebody else could get a lot more love out of this book than I will. So I am going to be adding this one to the pile. The next book I have is a thriller. I believe I read this one last year. This is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I hope I'm saying that right. I read The Silent Patient by him and I really enjoyed that one. So I picked this one up when I found it at the thrift store. But quite honestly, I don't remember a single thing about this book. I don't remember loving it too much while I was reading it. I don't think I had any problems with the book. I just didn't really find it that interesting. And when I was done, it was kind of like, okay, that was good. I'm ready to move on. So I don't really ever think about the book anymore, and I don't think I would ever recommend it or read it again. It's just sitting on my shelf at this point, and I would love to give it a new home, so I'm going to add it to the pile as well. The next book is another Frida McFadden that I read for a book club, actually, which was why I purchased the book. This is The Crash by Frida McFadden. This one I don't really have many good things to say about it. I just did not like it personally. It is not my cup of tea as a thriller book. The writing was, again, not for me. I thought it was very cringy, and especially the main character in this book. It was really hard to be in her point of view for the entire book. She was just very naive and she was making a lot of terrible decisions, and just the way that she would talk about things really cringed me out, and I just was not a fan. The plot twist didn't really redeem it for me either, so this is just one that I would not really recommend, and am definitely not going to be rereading. So this one will go on the pile as well. My next book is another Kristen Hanna book, but again, I'm not getting rid of it because I don't want to read it. I'm getting rid of it because my copy is not great and I would like to have a nice copy because I think I'm really going to like this one. This is Kristen Hanna's The Women. This one I found at a little free library. And again, I thought I was really scoring when I found it. I was super excited to find it. But then I went to go read it one day and I found that most of the pages are pretty water damaged and the copy is just pretty beat up. So I want to have a little bit of a nicer copy to be able to physically read it. So I will probably be purchasing this one from a bookstore somewhere. But in the meantime, I will be passing this one along. I just am hoping to have a little bit of a nicer copy. So I will be passing this one along. The next book that I have, I really don't even remember buying this one. I think I bought it at a library sale a while ago. So it was like $1 when I got it. But this is Vanishing by Jodi Picoult. I remember going through a little bit of a Jodi Picoult phase and I bought a lot of Jodi Picoult books and then I didn't end up reading half of them and now I'm not really interested in reading them anymore. I really don't even know what this book is about. I was kind of just buying whatever books I could find that were by Jodi Picoult. So like I said, I'm not really gravitating towards this book and I have no desire to read it, so I'm going to be passing this one along as well. Next book is another thriller. This is 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. I've read The Kind Worth Killing by this author and I really enjoyed it. So I found this one and thought it would be a good read to see if I liked another book by him. And this one is really short, so I thought it would be the perfect read, but that was a couple of years ago again, and I have just not really been interested in picking this one up. It also has deckled edges, which I didn't realize when I bought it, but that is not something that I am interested in reading. It just makes the turning the page experience kind of weird for me. So it looks cool, but I don't think I would enjoy physically reading this copy. So if I do want to read this at some point, I will just borrow it from my library or maybe listen to the audiobook, but I don't have a need to keep it on my physical shelf anymore. Okay, we're on to the next stack. I need to count up how many I have so far because I would love to keep track of how many books I'm actually getting rid of today. So far, I've gotten rid of 10 books and I have 2 more stacks to get through. So let's continue. The next book that I am unhauling today is another one that I found thrifting, and I thought it was a really good find because I thought eventually I would get to this series and have the first book that I could start it. This is Sarah J. Maas Crescent City, book number 1. So I was feeling a little ambitious when I bought this book. I had not even read ACOTAR yet. I hadn't read anything by Sarah J. Maas at this point, but I was seeing a ton of hype around her books at the time, and everyone was raving about her books. So I found this and I'm like, yes, I'm going to read this at some point. I just need to get through her other series first, and then I will get to this one. This has been sitting on my shelf for a really long time, and I am just now getting to ACOTAR. I'm in the middle of reading ACOTAR right now, but I just don't see it as very feasible for me to get to this anytime in the future because I still would like to read Throne of Glass first before I get into this series. If I end up getting into this series, it is a huge book, and all 3 of the books in the series are this big. So this would definitely be a task. I'm just not ready for that yet. So I will be passing this one along for now. And if I get to the point where I'm ready to read it, I will either borrow it from the library or repurchase the series, depending on how excited I am for it. The next book, I fell victim to OG Book Talk and BookTube. This one was everywhere when I first started watching Book Talk and BookTube. Everyone was raving about this book and saying how wonderful it was. And then I started hearing things about like the amount of trigger warnings in the book and how it's just sad to be sad and there's not really a reason for it to be so sad. But I found it at a library sale and I figured, why not? I'll pick it up, I'll try it. And it's been sitting on my shelf ever since. And I have never had the urge to pick it up. So that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. It follows 4 college classmates kind of through their life and what has happened to them in the past and just following them together as friends. And like I said, I've heard that it is just sad and it just makes you feel terrible. So I just don't know that I will ever be in the mood to read something like this. I think my reading taste has changed a little bit since I picked this book up. And I think I just saw a familiar cover and thought, absolutely, I need to get it. I've heard so many people talking about it, but it's not really something that I'm actually interested in reading. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this one along as well. The next book I also found thrifting. You'll probably notice a pattern is that I love to thrift books and find them at little free libraries or library sales. So I do find a lot of my books that way. So it makes sense that I kind of give back to where I got them from at some point. But this is another thriller. This is The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. This one I bought just kind of on a whim. I read the back. I had never heard anything of it before. I read the back and I thought it sounded interesting. It's about a newly renovated hotel. Our main character gets invited to this hotel and then they're stuck there for a storm, and then strange things start happening from there. But recently I've seen this book pop up a little bit around Book Talk and BookTube, and I have not heard great reviews about it. And I've just never really felt the urge to grab it off of my shelf and read it. It kind of just sits there. So this one is probably going to sit for a lot longer if I don't get rid of it. So I'm going to add this one as well. The next couple books that I have on my pile here are books that I think I've just grown out of as a reader. My tastes have changed a little bit since I first started my reading journey. And those are some dark romance books. So this is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I also have Scarred by Emily McIntyre. These are both dark romance books that follow the villains of Disney stories that we know and love. So this is like if the villain were to get the main character, how would that play out? And I think after seeing some reviews and just having these for a really long time, that these are a little too spicy for my taste at this point. I'm not much of a spice reader, so I do love romance. A lot of spice is just not for me. I don't think these are going to be my cup of tea anymore. I remember buying these from the store a couple of years ago and I have not touched them since. So they are in nearly perfect condition and they have that great matte cover. So I'm almost a little sad to get rid of them just because of the feel of the book and their nice floppy editions, but I just feel bad knowing that they are going to be sitting on my shelf and no one is going to be reading them. So I will be passing these along. Speaking of another great copy of a book that I just don't want to read again or continue, this is another romance book. This is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. I just have the first book in the series. I never went out and bought the rest of the series. I just wanted to see what I thought of the first one before going to read the rest of them. This is a fantastic floppy copy. I am kind of sad to be getting rid of it. I think this is the floppiest book that I own, so it was good to read, but just the content of the book, I'm not really interested in continuing the series. This is another series that's gotten a lot of hype, which is why I went out and bought it in the first place, but just not really my cup of tea when it comes to a romance book. If you haven't read Binding 13 or the Boys of Tommen series, the first two books in this series are about Johnny and Shannon. And Johnny is a rugby player and Shannon just transferred to Tommen College. And she forms a relationship with Johnny and it kind of goes from there. There's a lot of trauma and hurt in this book, so a lot of really tough things to read about. But overall, I think this is just a little too young for me. And I just don't think the writing style is for me in these books, which is okay. I know that this is a widely loved series, so I know someone is going to get some great use out of this book. So I will be passing this one along. All right, we've made it to our third and final stack. I'm going to go ahead and count up what our final number is right now, and we'll see how many more books we can add. So our total count right now is 16 books that I am unhauling. And my last pile is pretty big here, so we will be adding a few more to our stack. First book on this stack is a thriller that I also found thrifting. This one is called Ruthless Game by Daniel Gerard. Hopefully I'm saying that right. This one I honestly know nothing about. I thought that it looked like a good thriller by the cover, but I never find myself reaching for this one. There's just a lot of other thrillers that I am a lot more excited to read, so I will most likely never be getting to this one, so I will add this one to the pile. The next book I have read, and it is part of a series, but I don't see myself continuing the series or rereading this book. This is None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney. This is a duology, I think, so there's one more book that comes after this. This one is actually very similar to The Naturals, which is, I think, why I bought it. It is following two teenagers who are recruited by the FBI to interview convicted juvenile killers and provide insight on cold cases. So it's a little bit different than The Naturals, but kind of in the same vein. I really liked this book. I thought it was a good read and just kind of an interesting one, but I don't find myself thinking about it very often or wanting to continue the series. So I'm going to pass this one along. This next one I think is classified as a thriller, at least that's what I've seen it marketed as. This is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This one is a movie on Netflix as well, and I've had this one on my shelf for a very long time. It's very short, so I'm not really sure what is keeping me from reading it. Every time I go to pick it up, I get scared of it and I put it back down because of what I've heard about it, I think. And it just makes you feel kind of unsettled at the end. There's not really a wrapped up ending. Things are left pretty ambiguous, and you kind of get to choose where it would go from there, which I don't really think is my kind of book. I like my thrillers to be wrapped up at the end and have kind of a satisfying plot twist. And this one, I think, would just leave me feeling kind of weird at the end. So I'm not really interested in picking this one up. I think the amount of times I've picked it up just to put it back down should tell me that I should not have this book on my shelf anymore. I think it could get some love in another home, so I will be passing this one along. This is another book that I've had since the beginning of my reading journey. I bought this when I first started reading. This is 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. I was just seeing some recommendations on TikTok and kind of buying whatever I saw as a recommendation, and this was one of those cases. This is a YA thriller, and it says at the top, you have to murder at least 3 people to be called a serial killer. The Magpie Man is looking for his 14th victim. Our main character gets recruited to be on an internet reality show in which she'll be filmed once a week for a whole day, and she's hoping to use this platform as a way to tell her audience of what happened to her mother, because her mother was murdered by this serial killer. But again, just not something that I'm really interested in picking up. It's been sitting on my shelf since I first started reading, which was probably about 3 years ago at this point, maybe even 4. So, way too long to go unread. I'm going to pass it along. The next 3 books I'll kind of talk about as a whole, even though it is a trilogy. This is a romance series. I did read the first book, but I still need to read the other 2. This is the Knockemout trilogy by Lucy Score. So I have Things We Never Got Over, Things We Hide from the Light, and Things We Left Behind. So I read this first book a couple of years ago. It is huge, first of all, for a romance book, but again, I was hearing great things about it. It was floating around TikTok and BookTube, so I figured that I would give it a try. And the first book was okay. I was not obsessed with it, but it was good enough that I finished it and was interested in what was happening. What I did like about this book was that there was kind of like a mystery side plot going on. So, minus the romance that was the majority of this book, there was kind of a mystery happening on the side, which kept me intrigued and wanting to know what was going to happen. But overall, this book was way too long. It took me a really long time to read, and I just wasn't that invested in it to continue the series, especially when the rest of the books are also the exact same size. They're both huge. So I just do not have the urge to finish the series, especially when they're going to be this big. I think I could find other books that I am much more interested in reading. So again, these are in really good condition. I bought them brand new. So I hope that someone will get some good use out of these books. My next book is also a romance by Lucy Score. This is Maggie Moves On. I initially bought this one because of the dog on the cover, and I thought that because there was such a cute dog on the cover that I would love the book. I've never read this one yet. It's been on my shelf for a very long time. And again, it's really big. All of Lucy Score's books are pretty big and they're romances. So I'm just wondering, is it worth it? Like, do I want to spend my time reading this long of a romance? And this one has just never really stuck out to me that I wanted to read. I believe this one is about a house flipping sensation, and YouTube star Maggie Nichols is our female main character's name. And she has to work with a landscaper on her next job named Silas Wright. And they don't get along at first, but obviously that's going to change as the book goes on. But again, I just haven't really been interested in picking this one up. I think my tastes have changed quite a bit since initially picking these books up, and I will be passing this one along as well. The next book on my list I did not realize was part of a series until I bought it. So that is one of the reasons why I'm getting rid of it. This is Abby Jimenez, Life's Too Short. I've read three Abby Jimenez books up to this point, and I have loved all of them. I think she's a fantastic author, and I really like her style of romance books. This book is a part of her first romance series, which is the Friend Zone series. So it's the Friend Zone, the Happy Ever After playlist, and then Life's Too Short. I just picked this one up because I saw Abby Jimenez and I was excited to read more of her books, but I have not read the first two before this one. And if I'm going to read this series, I would like to read the other two first before I get to this one. So I will most likely be borrowing these ones from the library or listening to them on audiobook, but there's no reason for me to keep this third book on my shelf. All right, and then my last two books also go hand in hand with each other. These are both Colleen Hoover books, and she is just an author that I have grown out of at this point. She was very crucial to the beginning of my reading journey. I read a lot of her books when I first started reading because they were everywhere. And her books are super accessible for readers. I think she's a great place to start if you're looking for something that could get you into reading. And I think she's done that for a lot of people, which is fantastic. But I just do not feel the urge to keep these on my shelf anymore. Their time has come, I think, and I will pass them along. But I have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and I have It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. So these are in the same series. So It Ends With Us came out first, and then It Starts With Us is kind of a continuation of the story. We get to see what happens with Lily and Atlas from the first book. And I wanted to reread this one before I went and saw the movie, which I'm glad that I did. This one was kind of just okay. I felt like it was a good continuation of the story and it added a little bit more to the story, but I don't think it was really necessary or added too much to the original story. I think it just kind of gave the readers a little bit more of the couple that we didn't get to see a lot of in the first book. So I'm glad that I read the two, but I do not feel the need to have them on my shelf anymore. And I know that they will get more love in another home. So I will be passing these ones on. All right, and that is it. We have made it to the end of our unhaul today. We are at 27 books that I am getting rid of, so I feel pretty good about that number. My shelves definitely feel a lot less cluttered, and they have a lot more room for new books that I am really excited about reading. So I will be taking these to little free libraries and my local bookstore to pass them along to new homes. And I'm excited to add some new books to my shelves. And I just need to give a disclaimer if any of these are your favorite books. I am so sorry. These just are either not my taste anymore or I'm just looking to get a new copy of them. So if you love these books, I am over the moon for you. However, they are just not for me anymore, which is totally fine. That's one of the things I love the most about reading is how different it can be for everyone and how people can have such different opinions about the same books. So that brings us to the end of this video for today. I am going to disperse these where they need to go. And now we have some refreshed shelves. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you are all having a fantastic March and beginning of your April. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support my channel. And thank you so much for being here. I will see you in my next one. Bye.